Hello, you guys. I have talked with some of you when you have gotten on chat, and some of you I have not seen for what will be like almost 2 months now. So I miss you, and pretty soon the school year will be over. It'll be interesting to see what school looks like next year. So today, if you have your book, like I said yesterday, you need to have your book. We are going to skip 292 and 293 because it's kind of hard to explain unless we're all together to do that. So also, we cannot do fluency. So 294, if you want to do it with a friend or your parent or somebody, it's good practice. So if you do look, the next page that I want you guys to look at is Proverbs. And Proverbs are kind of like those idioms that we did where they're figurative language and they're figures of speech. And they're kind of fun to do. So we're looking at 295. So we have worked with figurative language and to create vivid images and to place emphasis on events or characters. It is not meant to be taken literal. So like if I say it's raining cats and dogs, like right now it's pouring, but it's not cats and dogs, okay? So you don't take it literally. It's just something that is like a figure of speech, okay? And that's the same thing that we're going to do today. Like if we use phrases like blind as a bat or stubborn as a mule, it's not literal. It's just a figure of speech. So we're going to explore a new type of figurative language today, and it is called a proverb, okay? It's very possible that you have heard of proverbs being used, but maybe not completely understood what their meaning was. So it would be difficult to understand if you thought you were supposed to be taking them literally. So proverbs are phrases that are supposed to give advice in an unusual way, okay? So understanding proverbs, you have to have extended thinking skills. You can't just like assume that what they're telling you is it, okay? So you have to figure out what they're trying to say there. So if I say, for example, the early bird gets the worm, all right? So if I say, Beth, I know that you want to go to the big sale tomorrow. You should make sure you get there well before the store opens because the early bird gets the worm. It's just a figure of speech. He's not really going to go get a worm, okay? So think about that. If all birds are looking for food in the ground, earthworms, they often come up out of the ground in the morning when it's cool. And so the bird who gets there first is likely the one that's going to get that worm. So that's where they get that proverb from, okay? Another one, and I'm sure you've heard this, is birds of a feather flock together. If I look out the window and I see 3 of the meanest boys in school throwing dirt at each other, it doesn't surprise me because those kind of people hang out together. Kind of like when I say to you guys, walk like a duck, talk like a duck, you're a duck, same kind of thing, okay? So think about looking at wires strung between utility poles. You might have some utility poles and there's wires there. And often there's birds that are sitting on those wires together, maybe like 4, 5, 8 of them, okay? Usually they're all the same kind of bird, all right? So birds of a feather means that they're birds of the same kind. So what do? They flock together, okay? Another one that you've probably heard of is somebody says, don't put all your eggs in one basket. That's another really popular one. And I might say, I know you really like to play football and you're really good at it, but maybe you should try some other things and pay attention to your studies, okay, or your academics, all right? You don't want to put all your eggs in one basket, all right? So think about how fragile eggs are, all right? If you drop them, they break, okay? So if all your eggs are in one basket and you drop them all, what would happen to them? Well, they'd all break and then you'd have what? You wouldn't have any eggs, right? Okay, so same kind of thing. All right, so if one goes badly, then you still have one to choose from if you don't put them all in that one basket, okay? So on page 295, there is some matching right there, okay? So the first one, it says, if you're looking at 295, number 1 says, all that glitters is not gold, meaning if something looks good, it doesn't mean that it is good, okay? So let's look at the events and see if we can find an example of when you might need this advice. Okay, and if you look, it's going to be C, okay? So the car looked great, but it turned out to be a very a very bad boy. It's not a good one, okay? So that's going to be one of those that would go with C. So what you're going to do is you're going to match those, okay? Yeah, it was a bad buy. I don't know what I'm saying there. It's bad reading again. So anyway, so it turned out to be a bad buy. So even though something looks good, it might not be, it's kind of like that judging a book by its cover, all right, that kind of thing. So you're going to match those, and if you could go through and take a picture, that would be great, okay? Now, we are going to skip 296 because we would have to do that together, but we are going to go through, and go through the target words, okay? So if we look from Heroes from Mythology, let's take a look at this. Okay, we're going to preview the prompts for the short piece of text that we'll read. So I'll read the prompt and we're going to go through those. So number 1 says on 297, infer what happened when Odysseus's men jumped out of the Trojan horse. Okay, so you have to know what to do when you infer that. The second one is going to be to contrast the mythological characters Odin and Odysseus. The third one, this time you would be assessing, okay? Assess the importance of magical powers for a mythological hero. 4, you're going to have to prove that different cultures created their own myths. And on 5, this one's create, okay? Create a mythological hero that would be able to help you in school, all right? So let's take a look at this, okay? So on 297, it's Heroes from Mythology. It says, the myths created by people from different ancient cultures revolved around heroic characters. These heroes face special challenges and encounters with supernatural characters. Mythological heroes possessed a variety of unique traits that enabled them to overcome great obstacles. First of all, most legendary heroes have some kind of superhuman power. The heroes of ancient Greek legends were usually related to the gods. This meant that they would be very strong, extremely clever, and very lucky. Hercules, for example, was only a baby when he strangled 2 snakes that had been sent to kill him. Also, some heroes used magic. Odin was a very important Norse god. He had an invincible spear called Gungnir. He also had 2 ravens. They would perch on his shoulder and fly off to spy on his enemies. His son Thor had a hammer called Mjolnir, which is the destroyer, and the hammer returned like a boomerang whenever he threw it. He also had a magic belt, and this belt doubled in strength. Odysseus was a hero who did not have any magic powers. He captured the city of Troy by hiding his army in a giant wooden horse. And the Trojans thought it was a gift from the Greeks, but they got an unpleasant surprise when Odysseus's men jumped out. In addition, many heroes from myths and legends have a fatal flaw. Few heroes are totally invincible. Most have one weakness that can destroy them. And in the case of Achilles, the great Greek warrior of the Trojan War, it was his heel. When Achilles was a baby, his mother dipped him in the magic river Styx. This made his whole body invulnerable, except for his heel where she held him. He finally died when a poisoned arrow struck him on the heel. So let's check out, you guys, on this one, the comprehension of this passage by responding to the prompts that require different levels of thinking, okay? For some prompts, you're going to need to think outside the box, and that's why it's called a higher level of thinking, okay? So the first one had said to infer what happened when Odysseus's men jumped out of the Trojan horse. Well, you can change that prompt into a question, okay? Because that's a statement. So if I say the question would be, what do you think happened when Odysseus's men jumped out of the Trojan horse, okay? So we need to check back to the text and look for some clues. So if you look at that 4th paragraph, all right, it tells us that Odysseus captured the city of Troy, all right, and that the men were in for not a pleasant surprise. It states an unpleasant surprise, all right? So these clues confirm that Odysseus and his men fought the Trojans and won the battle because of the element of surprise, all right? So the answer would be Odysseus's men attacked the men of Troy, and the element of surprise helped them win, okay? Now, I am going to give you guys answers for these too, so that you can make sure you have the right things written down. But let's look at the second one. It says, contrast the mythological characters of Odin and Odysseus. So if I'm going to change that statement into a question, I might say, how are Odin and Odysseus different? Okay, because I am contrasting. Remember, when we compare, it's the same. If I'm contrasting, it's their differences, all right? So think about origin, think about magic, and the status when looking for the differences between those two, okay? So what is their origin and where were they from? Did they have any magical powers? What was their status? Meaning, were they gods? Are they creatures? Or are they mortal men? Okay? So we'll look at, I'll help you with that answer when we come back. Okay, so if you think about that, though, magical powers were not important for all of them because one of them was mortal, okay, because Odysseus was not, all right? But however, he was very clever and he was brave. So his was more of a mental thing than of a special powers thing, okay? So the level of thinking there is also strategic thinking, all right? As was the first one. Okay, when you go to number 3, we're going to do those same things, okay? And I will give you the answers for those to help you kind of figure those out, okay? On 3, you kind of got to think about, were magical powers important for mythological heroes? So, obviously not all of them, but anyway, so you just got to read back, okay? But I will give you the answers for those. It's kind of hard when we're not together. All right, so that will get you through lesson 3, and also you can also cross out, unless you want to practice with a parent, 299, because that's sentence fluency, where we aren't going to be able to do that together either, okay? So that gets us through lesson 3. And then we are going to do some stuff later this week with mythological characters, not from the book, okay? So I appreciate your answers on the questions of the day. They're fun to read. Some of you guys have some very interesting wrestling names and outfits that you're going to wear. So anyway, I miss you guys. Do your best. I know that you might miss some answers and assignments here and there, but just try to touch base. That makes all the difference, okay? Anyway, okay. We'll Google Meet here sometime soon so that we can all see each other again. Hopefully more of you guys get on. All right, see you guys.